We were homeschooled, so we didn't have a TV. And that was a decision my dad made when I was 1 because he was spending more time in front of the television than he was spending with me. And interestingly enough, that had a huge impact on my life because instead of being in front of a television, I spent it at the keyboard and loved it. Well, then we started doing things together. People heard us. I think a friend came over and visited and said, "Oh, you need to come play at our church." Her husband was a pastor. And so we went and played at their church, and there was gig after gig after gig that just kind of piled up after that.
One penny.
What a deal. So do drop in.
Call through.
Yahoo.
Give a big howdy hello.
And check us out.
My sister sang, and I loved the keyboard, playing piano. I spent hours and hours through the angst of teenagehood. That was how I pounded out my frustrations and my anxieties, and loved it, absolutely loved it. I would play for 8 to 12 hours at a time. I would find that was my release. I would play for hours. I wrote songs during that time, and I did more writing then than I do now because I don't have the time now, but I love writing, I love playing. We absolutely loved singing together, and then gradually it turned into an actual business. My mom became the business manager, and we started booking concerts, first in South Dakota, and then from there all over the country. Arizona, Texas, California, Florida, you name it. There wasn't many states that we didn't get to. And there was a certain aspect of it that was very, very financially driven. So I'll tell this story. We did the Sun Bowl in Arizona, in the Phoenix area, 5,000 people. It was a great experience, and the feeling that I took away from it was sort of, wasn't that fabulous. It was something we built up in our minds for a long time, knowing this concert was coming. We did fairly well financially, and then we went home to Minnesota later on that spring. It was our route. We went home to Minnesota, and we were always booking wherever we were going to be. Things were being booked, and so we had a church booked in LaBolt, South Dakota, which most people have never heard of because it's not very big. I don't remember if it was maybe 500, 1,500. I don't remember the number of people in that town. But I remember looking ahead thinking, this one's going to suck. And it's kind of embarrassing to say that now because there were real people in LaBolt, South Dakota, regardless of how many there would be. But we had been in a lot of small towns, and sometimes it was really pretty not exciting. There was 25 people there, and you went home, you gave it your all, and you went home, and the energy didn't really come back to you. But my point is, when we went to LaBolt, South Dakota, I had this feeling that it wasn't going to be very much fun. And we walked into the church, and in the Midwest, I don't know if they do it all over the country, but a lot of the older churches had these little placards up on the wall, and it would show how many people were there, how much the offering was, and I think some hymn numbers, or maybe what the hymn numbers were for today. And so as a musician, you learned when you walked into the church to kind of check out that little placard, because if there was only 50 people there last week, it doesn't bode well for how big this concert's going to be, especially if you're really big into counting numbers. So, and I was. So I looked up, and sure enough, it said 50 or 63 or something like that, and I thought, yeah, that's what I thought. LaBolt, South Dakota, little tiny church, it's not going to be much. And I was really wrong. Because the fact is that nobody ever came to LaBolt, South Dakota. So even though that church maybe had 63 last Sunday, everybody came. The Lutherans, I don't remember what church it was, Episcopal or whatever it was, but the Lutherans came, the Catholics came, the people that didn't believe in God came, the ranchers came. It was just fun. It was packed out the doors. There was people, standing room only. We sold more tapes and CDs than we had at any other time, any other concert. And we had a blast. And what I realized was, they wanted us to be there. At the Sun Bowl, we were contractually obligated to be there. And they were used to seeing someone new every so often. And so the response was fairly muted. And therein lies the seed of the band Wanted. That's why it's called Wanted. We intend and commit to sing where we're wanted. And that led us down the path of where the greatest need is, rather than where the greatest money is. Hey, come on in. Getting ready to hit the trail, going on to, I think it's Beehive Homes today is where we're headed. And this is when you wish you had the air horn, because going through small towns and people stare, it's really great to go, wong.
Right.
They always stare and wonder, who is that? Where are they going?
You'll listen? Okay.
You're there.
I'm here.
Check, 1, 2.
For us to bring in live music to a group like that really means something to them. And you can tell it when you get there. The way they receive you, the way they respond when you're singing. And we've also discovered that they're not just, the live music is super cool. And that's my passion. I love music. And that's my excuse to come in the door. But what they really want is connection with human beings. And we are committed to bringing that with us, because if we just do a great show and then we leave at the back door, it has a limited impact. But what we do is, the minute the last note is sung, we put down our microphones and we step past that little barricade that's at the front of the monitors, and we start shaking hands and visiting with whoever it is that's sitting in those chairs in front of us. And every time, it makes for a huge experience for them and for us. I have a vision for more than just us doing this. I think there's a need out there. We could probably have 5 to 10 buses running all the time around this country, as big as the need is for prisons, assisted living, nursing homes, places where people cannot get out. And so when we put the funding together for this, I know it's going to grow just a lot bigger. But right now, we're living in the bus. That is our home sweet home. It is not about how much money can we make. And I believe what we're going to find is that the money will follow. And that's just a trust, and it's just a belief that I have. Because right now, we're hanging out over the edge financially. We're committed. We've bought a bus. We don't currently, in my bank account, have the money to finish the inside of that bus. And we're leaving in 2 months, January 1st. So we don't know how that's going to happen, but I know it's going to happen. And it may not look the way that it did in my mind when I bought the bus, and that's okay. It's going to look the way it's supposed to look as we continue to follow our dream. Thank you, and God bless you guys. Have a really great week. What we find is when we get on stage, whether there are 10 people sitting in wheelchairs with very little energy coming back, and any performer will tell you that's not a whole lot of fun from a performance standpoint, but whether we're doing that or whether we're in front of a lot bigger crowd, we love it. We love the interaction between each other. We love what happens, even if we do come in and the energy is very low. We're not even sure if everyone is even able to hear us or understand what we're saying. When we leave, the energy is much higher, and they're happier, and they're connecting. Maybe some of them haven't connected for a long time, and staff will share that with us. This lady hasn't connected on any level with anyone until you sang "Can't Help Falling in Love with You," and then she sang the whole thing from start to finish. one of the most touching moments we had was Can't Help Falling in Love with You, which our daughter Tasha sings, and she does a really great job of it. She started singing at one nursing home, and she wasn't 5 words in, and every one of them was singing with tears in their eyes, and we had tears in our eyes because we had connected with something that mattered to them. That's just, yeah. For me, that's why we do what we do.